Welcome to the Candle Business Coach Podcast, a show about the craft of candle making and small business. I'm your host, Kirsty Allen, and I'm a candle maker, mum of three, and kindness advocator. Join me as I dive into all things candles and small business and deliver advice and tips to you in episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Are you on the list to get my daily motivation emails? Every day I'll send you a message that is designed to help keep you focused on taking action toward your goals. Sign up using the link in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by my free ebook, the Candle Business Marketing Kickstarter Kit. Inside this free ebook, you'll find your blocks of time and learn actionable tips so you can grow your business faster and earn more income to lead you to your goals. Check out the link in the show notes for your copy. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today on the show with me, I have the lovely Nicole from AUZi Insurance to chat with us about the importance of having insurance as a candle maker.
Hi, everyone.
Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself if they haven't heard of you?
I'm a broker here at AUZi Insurance. I've been in the insurance industry since I was 21-ish now. I'm about 34 now. Yeah, and I've kind of always worked in general liability. I initially started specialising in liability, and then I went and did general, which was covering all types of risks, and then I've kind of come back to the general liability and professional indemnity here at AUZi. I joined AUZi in 2019, at the beginning of 2019. Yeah, and been here ever since. So I did take some maternity leave. So my first 3 months of being here at AUZi, I found out I was pregnant. So that was sting, but the team here all handled it really well. So yeah, first time mum and yeah, doing my thing with insurance, which is fun.
Lovely. Now, can you share what your experience is with candles and candle making?
Sure. To be honest, I didn't really have any experience with candles prior to working at AUZi. Obviously, I enjoyed them and I bought them, but I didn't have any idea of what actually went into making and selling candles. So all my research and everything has been done since I've been here at AUZi, and now I feel like I'm the biggest critic if I ever get a candle. I'm judging everything about it, and you just have these expectations after you're aware of the melt pour and like the wicks and everything. So now I'm all up on all of that, and yeah, I feel like I'm a huge candle critic. So that's really my experience is just here with AUZi, and yeah, learning and loving it really. Just the whole industry of candles, how it's very unique and there's so many different twists and turns that you can have with it. Just, yeah, I love watching other people find something really unique and just making that their own, and that's when you really see their business flourish as well, which is just really fun.
Exactly. And you find that if a person has a point of difference in the industry, that is what will set them apart to make more sales and have more followers rather than just making something that everyone has seen before.
Absolutely, yeah. Generally, like our most successful candle makers would have a unique kind of twist to it, or just really genuinely themselves. I think that's also the key, is like when you're really just showing that who you are and like what you're creating and the love for something, you really see that shine through. So, yeah.
The passion that candle makers have, when that comes through, it's incredible, and it's inspiring to see someone following their journey through life when they are doing something that they love and they can share that love and creativity with others.
Yeah, you can really just put in their products as well, and it's something they really love doing. And
so for those that don't know, what is AUZi Insurance?
So we are an insurance company. So we specialise in liability insurance and professional indemnity insurance. We're coming up to our 9 years in December. It'll be our birthday. And so Neil, our founder and director, he found a gap in the market, which was easy insurance for small businesses and niches. So we specialise in niches, and candle makers being one of them. We really specialise in the handmade field. So we have a number of policies. Our main one initially when we first started was market store holders, and that's kind of just grown and stemmed from there. A lot of market store holders are those handmade creative people who then did candles and soaps and craft items, jewelry. So we just kind of looked at what the market needed, saw the gaps, and then we create policies for that niche. So a general insurance broker would generally look at a business, look at what cover you need and then create your policy. Whereas we have looked at the niche as a full whole and gone, okay, candle makers need this and this is what they do, this is all their risks, this is how they make their candles. And then we've created a policy for the majority. And then if you fit within our policy, you get a really great policy, a really great rate. You get Tracy and I who support you through a lot of things. And that policy is just really easy and streamlined. So you can obtain a quote online. You can place cover online, get all your policy online. You don't even need to speak to us if you don't want to. You're welcome to speak to us though. But yeah, you can get cover literally in 5 minutes. Whereas if you went to a general insurance broker and they had to create that policy, you're looking at days for a turnaround to get a policy. You need to give them a lot more information. You need to help educate them to understand your industry. So yeah, that's where we're a bit different because we are online as well, we have a lot more free time to delve into these niches and understand them, whereas a general broker just doesn't really have that spare time like us, which is good.
And not only would they not have the time, I imagine that the cost would be a lot higher for the general candle maker or soap maker as well, because they're having to create a policy from scratch rather than coming off the back of your policy that already exists.
That's correct, yeah. So another thing with us is because we have a good portfolio, so the more candle makers we have, the better rates we can offer because it's more appealing to our insurer. So that's also goes in the advantage of candle makers, whereas if you are just a sole candle maker with a sole broker, they're not going to have that relationship with the insurer and you would be paying a higher rate for sure.
Can you tell us about the candle makers policy that AUZi offers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the candle makers policy automatically includes public and products liability insurance. So public liability is designed to protect you against personal injury and property damage arising from your business activities, whereas products liability is personal injury and property damage arising from the products you sell. So if that candle goes to somebody's home and causes any property damage, that's a product liability claim. We automatically cover candles under that policy, wax melts, reed diffusers, and candle accessories and aroma beads. And then if your products are kind of expanding out from that, we might need to look at a different policy for you as well. But we find those kind of products really cover the candle makers generally. Like a lot of candle makers will start with candles, melts, reed diffusers, and that's a pretty good product range.
And then when their range expands, they can look at expanding their insurance coverage as well. At the same time.
We have other policies. So we could, depending on when it happens throughout your policy period, look at switching you over to a different policy or extending your current policy. But everybody's would be rated individually when that happens.
Yeah, and it would just take, I imagine, just a simple phone call or an email to query, am I on the right policy still? I've brought in this new product. What do you recommend to ensure I'm covered?
Absolutely. Yeah, like Tracy and I here, Monday to Friday, there's like the live chat feature on our website as well, which you'd always come through to Tracy or I. Sometimes you might get now. Yeah, or a quick phone call really, just to let us know what's happening and what's changing. And that's probably like an important lesson for all insurances. Like if something changes, you need to let your insurer, just a quick email, give us a heads up.
So why should someone choose to take out the candle maker's insurance policy through AUZi as opposed to a different insurer?
I think because we've invested the time and we make it very easy for you, and that we really understand the candle making industry. Like we understand what goes into it, the time you put into it, and we've invested a lot of time and research into the candle making realm. We're in a lot of those forums as well, so we're kind of keeping up with the trend. So if we see that there's a new trend happening, we'll try and already get that covered before you even make contact with us. So I guess we're just ahead of the game compared to a general insurance broker who's dealing with a number of different businesses and niches.
Yeah, I feel that AUZi is more specific to what the candle maker needs, and that means that you're getting the proper coverage for the products that you're creating for your business. So what else does the policy actually cover? Like what does it include?
So it's just including liability insurance. So there's no cover there for things like theft or property damage for yourself. So if all your candles got damaged when you're setting up a market stall, there's no cover for any of that. So it's really just personal injury and property damage arising from your business activities and the products you sell. So that's covering it happening to a third party rather than you personally. So if you were personally injured while you're making your candles or selling your candles, there's no cover for that. Yeah, if your candles were stolen or they got damaged in transit, there's nothing for that either. It's just purely liability. The candle maker policy automatically covers your sales Australia-wide. So it covers you at market stalls, pop-up shops, expos, retailing, wholesaling, and it can also be extended to cover you worldwide, excluding the US and Canada as well.
Okay. Why is the USA and Canada excluded?
Yeah, it's just because of their legal system over there. So the insurer doesn't like it. A lot of insurers don't like it because the US is so broad with their legal system. So there could be like 20 different legal systems that the insurer would need to know in order to defend you. So the risk is just too high for them because America is a bit of a crazy country when it comes to legal.
So what about home and contents protection?
Yeah, so we personally don't offer any home and contents insurance, and it is a very hot topic for small businesses operating from home. So it's very important that you speak to your home and contents insurer or your landlord and let them know that you're operating a business from home. So from an insurer's point of view, it changes the risk for them. Some insurers are totally fine with it, some are not. So it's just simply getting on the phone to them or sending them an email and just declaring that you're running a business from home. So with all insurance, we have a duty of disclosure, and that's relevant information that the insurer will want to know is that you're operating a business from home. There was an article circulating on all the Facebook groups and in the news about AUZi declining a claim for an egg farm. So they sold eggs at the front of their property. There was a house fire. They lost everything, and AUZi declined the claim because they never declared that they were running that egg business. Now, reading that article, you can see that there's a lot of things that are missed out, and not everybody's story was heard there, but it's definitely what will happen. Like an insurer, if there's a huge claim and there's a way out, they're going to look for that way out, especially with home and contents, which is really unfortunate. So the onus is on you to make sure you're declaring everything. When you're doing your renewals, when you're buying a policy, you're ticking all those boxes saying nothing else declared, you don't need to know anymore. It's just those little things like it's better to over-disclose in those situations than not say anything.
And you wouldn't want to get caught out in a situation like that because you've not declared from the start, perhaps, or when the business is established. What would you recommend?
It really depends. Like, everybody's different. If you're taking out the policy and you're running the business at home, let them know straight away. If you already have that policy in place and then you decide to start the business later on, give them a call and let them know. If you weren't aware of letting them know, it's best to just give them a call straight away and let them know. Like, there are insurers that are coming straight off risk when you're calling mid-term and saying, hey, I run a business from home. They're saying, oh, we can't help you. You need to go source insurance elsewhere. You've got 14 days. But it's important to tell them, because if you don't tell them and something happens, you've been paying this premium for X amount of years for nothing because you're not covered when it comes time. So you just need to disclose it, because you don't want to be in that predicament where your claim is declined and you don't have a house anymore and you've been paying the insurance for the last 10 years thinking you're doing the right thing. So
it's just not worth the risk.
No.
And if all of it takes is a simple phone call just to make sure that you're either covered with that insurer or that you have to look for insurance elsewhere, getting on top of that as soon as you can is vital. Absolutely.
Like, all that hard work that goes into starting a business and owning your home, you don't want to lose that in just like 1 second,
So what things should people look for when researching the different insurance providers and different?
A few things. Like, you want to be checking out the policy wordings. Like, I know they're a bit daunting to like read through a whole document, but you're really wanting to look at what is covered and what is excluded on policy. So sometimes insurers can add some endorsements on your policy that exclude certain risks, and that can be sometimes common. So it's best to have a look at those exclusions and endorsements and just make sure that they're not including it further up in the policy than excluding it further down. If you are going through a broker, though, they should be drawing your attention to all those things, but it's still, the onus is on you to still have a look at that and make sure that it's okay. You want to be comparing the premiums and the excesses as well, and you're also wanting to make sure that the insurer is reputable. So they're pretty much the main ones that you're wanting to look at. And I would suggest also like having a feel for the broker or the insurer that you're speaking to. Like, when you're speaking to them, do they understand you? Do they understand the industry? Are they asking you the right questions? Do you get that good feel with them, or are you a bit off? Are you, not connecting? I think that's really important to make sure that they're aligning with your business and they understand what you're doing.
And just with other areas of life, it's important to trust that intuition and go with your gut, even when it comes to insurance.
That's right.
Especially when it comes to insurance, yeah.
When you start your candle business, there are so many things to consider and research along the way, especially when it comes to choosing the right suppliers. Long Story Short provides all your design and printing needs, from your logo and branding to designing and printing your product labels. The quality is exceptional, the customer service is amazing, and prices are very reasonable. They're the only label company I recommend, so check out their website or send them an email today to get started. hello@longstoryshortdesign.com.au.
So why is it important to test our products or candles before selling them?
Yeah, so under Australian law, as a manufacturer and seller, you have a duty to ensure that your products are safe for your consumer. So the only way you can ensure that your products are safe is by testing your products. And I know a lot of people test their products religiously but never document it. So it's just all up in their mind. They've tested it a million times. They've thought about it. They know everything, but it's not documented. So that is good for you, but it's not good for anyone else. So you need to think about, if a claim did arise, your insurer is acting on your behalf. And it's hard for them just to act on your word of saying, I tested it, it was fine, nothing to worry. It's the consumer's fault. Whereas if you have it all documented, you can say, here's my records, here's my best practice. You can see I've tested everything. This has never occurred before. You know, the customer must have burnt my candle for 20 hours and that's what's caused the issue. And then that lets the insurer help defend you. They can then go and say, look, we've got all these testing records. This isn't the case. I think this is your issue, not necessarily ours. So in that case, it can just help minimise the claim cost from the insurer's point of view and your point of view as well. But yeah, if you're just saying, documenting it in your mind and not actually having it anywhere documented, it's just going to turn into a he said, she said, and it's just, you know, you can't just have it documented in your mind. It needs to be written down. Some photos need to be taken. The AUZi actually have a really good document that is like a product safety document. It is very detailed because it's for all products that are manufactured in Australia. It's not just designed for candles, but there's some really good guidelines in there if you have a read of that, and just spend the time to kind of get your head around what would be required and best practices for testing, like testing each vessel, testing the different waxes, the different fragrances, the different wicks. You need to do all that. It's not just, you know, chucking the wick in, chucking the wax in, hoping for the best. You need to have all that testing there.
Particularly because the products we're creating are literally a flame in someone's home. It can cause a fire, and that's the reality of what can happen if something isn't right with the candle to begin with. So doing that testing from the very beginning and taking notes and documenting that will help protect you if something does come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure if you're not actually writing it down, like, it's so hard to keep on top of life admin, let alone candle testing. Like, you could just be wasting your time testing the same thing 100 times that you don't need to when you've already done that fragrance, or you can't remember who did that fragrance mix, or, you know, different wax. Like, you just need to document it so you can review back for your own records really as well.
So what generally happens when a claim arises?
So generally the third party, so your customer or whoever their property was damaged or personal injury obtained from your activities, would contact you to let you know of the incident. So they need to provide you a letter of demand. So a letter of demand would be holding you responsible for what has happened and requesting the compensation that they want. So in most cases with candles, like, the most common claim we see are like vessels exploding or scorching the table that the candle or the vessel was on. So generally a letter of demand there would be saying that they hold you responsible for this reason, and it's going to cost this amount of money for me to replace my bench top, and here's a quote. And then the insurer would give that to us here at AUZi or your insurance broker, and then the insurer would take over from there. So our policy has a $500 excess. So that's another important thing to look at when you're taking out a policy, what your excess is, and make sure it's feasible and affordable if a claim did arise. The insurer would accept that claim, you'd pay your excess, the insurer would then take over. So the insurer would negotiate and liaise with the third party, your customer, to get it settled and finalised. So in those types of cases, it's pretty cut and dry. The insurer will get those quotes, have it all sorted out and paid back to the third party pretty quickly and closed. So the insurer is quite conscious, our insurer at least, is quite conscious to maintain your reputation in the industry. Like, you don't want to have a claim that's not getting paid or drawn out and, you know, damaging your reputation as a candle maker for something that's quite minor.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And just circling back to the excess, so it's a $500 excess with AUZi. Is that something that can be changed, as in can the candle maker choose a higher excess or a lower excess, or is it just the $500?
With AUZi, you can't change it. It's just a standard $500 excess. If you were going through a different insurer, you could probably play around with it a little bit to try and get the premium down. Generally speaking, though, like, the premiums for candle makers for liability, it ranges anywhere, say, from $300 upwards. So it's not going to really reduce that premium much anyway, because we're already talking about minimum premiums from an insurer. So I think I should have probably done my research to figure out what our prices started with candles. But yeah, if you budgeted for like $350 upwards, like there's not much room to come down more if you had $1,000 or a $2,000 excess from the insurer's point of view.
That's good to know. So do the vessels that we use to make candles, do they need to be purchased from Australian suppliers?
They don't, and that's probably different for all insurers. So if you're not with AUZi, you're probably best to have a chat with your insurer to confirm. But from our point of view, they don't need to be sourced from Australian candle suppliers or Australian suppliers as a whole. The onus is on you as a candle maker to ensure your product is safe for your consumer. So it comes back down to that testing. So if you did find a vessel somewhere else, you need to make sure that you're doing adequate testing on that vessel to make sure that it's safe for your consumer and that it is suitable for a candle, suitable, can maintain that heat, it's not getting too hot, it's not going to, crack or break under that high temperatures. So,
can crystals and dried flowers be used in candles? I know this is a bit of a hot topic among the candle community.
Yes, it's a very hot topic. From our insurer's point of view, they say yes. However, the wick can be the only combustible item in that candle. So again, it's down to testing, making sure that when you're doing all that testing, you're documenting it and that the wick is the only thing that combusts or lights throughout the entire burn of the candle. So it's not as okay to just chuck flowers on top and light it and say, oh, it didn't work and it was fine, didn't combust. You need to burn it all the way to the bottom, make sure that those, botanicals aren't coming into the flame, aren't becoming a light. And even with the crystals, you don't want them to be exploding or anything like that. And there's different types of crystals that are suitable and aren't suitable. And it all comes down to you doing your research and testing to make sure that end product is safe for your consumer.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is different for all insurers though. So it's just AUZi that I'm aware of that will accept it. So it's best to have a chat with your insurer and make sure that they're on that same page.
And that probably would be in the terms and conditions of the policy as well?
Not necessarily, to be honest. So, yeah, when they're creating a policy for candle makers, there might not be an exclusion already made for something like that. So it's just getting the feel from the insurer if they're comfortable with it. So it's having a chat with them. If they agree verbally, getting it in writing so it's there for you. But, yeah, it's definitely having a chat and looking at your policy and, yeah, getting it in writing that they accept that and under what conditions they accept it.
And doing your due diligence as well.
It is, yes, yeah, lots and lots of testing.
Are candle refills covered under the policy?
Yes, so under AUZi's policy, they're covered. Initially, in early days of that policy, we said that it could only be your own vessel that you're refilling. You can use other people's vessels, but you do need to be making sure that you're doing, a good review and you're familiar with that size vessel to make sure that you're, using the right wick size and adding all the right percentages and everything in there. So our refills are covered, yeah.
Why is public and products liability insurance so important for candle makers to have, especially when they first start their business?
Really, if a claim occurs, so if something does happen and you do burn down somebody's house and you don't have insurance in place, they're going to come after you personally. So depending on what you have, they could take your house, they could take your business. And realistically, at the end of the day, if somebody's house burnt down and it was found that your candle was the source of the fire, you personally want to compensate them. You want to put them back in the same position they were in. Like nobody wants somebody to lose their house or lose anything from a candle fire and knowing it was your candle. So I think it's important just so you can rest easy at night knowing that you have that protection, that you're not going to lose everything you've worked so hard for. You're not going to leave somebody left homeless because you don't have insurance and you don't have the capacity to pay them to rebuild their house. You have to think a house fire would cost millions of dollars, really. Like you've got to remove everything, you've got to replace it. There's temporary accommodation for the people that have lost everything. There's compensation for those people that have lost everything. It could be really, really damaging. So
it's very much worth the premium, the annual premium cost of having insurance, having that peace of mind and knowing that if something does go wrong, you're covered and the person that's affected won't be put out as much as if you didn't have insurance. Yeah.
And a lot of time when you're a new candle maker, like your first customers are your family and your friends and people that you associate with. So you just feel so horrible if that, you happen to your best friend or something and then you couldn't even fix the situation because you have no insurance and it'd just be horrible.
What are some common misconceptions about product or public liability insurance that you know of?
And that's a good question. I think a lot of people think products liability is actually going to cover your product if it was stolen or damaged, whereas it's not. It's covering personal injury or property damage arising from that product to third parties. So that's probably a big misconception there. Another one that I see in the groups a lot as well is like that the insurer isn't acting on your behalf. So that's like when you have a contract with an insurer, so you've placed cover and a claim occurs, the insurer is then acting as you. So, you know, they've got your best interest at heart when they're making claims and dealing with them and settling them. They're not working against you. I think that's probably a big misconception. The purpose of insurance as well is to put you or your customer back into the same position they were in prior to the claim. And that's for all types of insurance. And I think that kind of gets lost in the insurance world as well a little bit.
Particularly when those clickbait stories come through and have insurance companies at the forefront of those stories. Everyone's looking for someone to blame and point the finger. So
yes,
yeah. But it makes
there's obviously good and bad of insurance, and there's definitely some bad guys out there. But if we're all doing the right thing, then you're not going to really fall down that trap.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about AUZi Insurance or the Candlemakers policy?
Our Candlemakers policy runs for a 13-month period as a special offer. So you pay for 12 months and you get a 13-month period. We've been running that offer for a while now and maintaining our prices to be the same. So we haven't really been seeing any increases over the years. The insurer is putting a bit of pressure on us with the prices. So there is a chance that those 13-month policies will come to an end soon. So I guess if you've been sitting on the fence, you might want to jump on and buy it so you get 13 months. But otherwise, I don't know when it will come to an end, but yeah, it's becoming getting a bit closer. We do have a lot of information on our website. So we are an online provider. So if you just jumped onto our website and looked at the Candlemakers page, there's heaps of info on that. And then also we have the frequently asked questions. So in the frequently asked questions tab on our website, we have a range of questions dedicated to candles. And it's all those common questions that we get, like the refills and the botanicals and candles. There's a whole heap of questions there. And if we can't help you with Tracy and I or those questions, we generally try and find someone who can or direct you in the right direction. So from an insurance point of view, we can't give you advice on labelling, but we can point you in the right direction to go for something like that. But we can't tell you what you can and can't put on your label or how you should be labelling it. It's got to be something that you determine and research and, put on there.
And I'll add all the links into the show notes as well so that the listeners can find where the policy is and the frequently asked questions as well.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
So we've come to my favourite part of our chat where I ask 3 questions for all my podcast guests. Number 1, what is your favourite candle fragrance?
I really love salted caramel. It's always been like my long-time favourite. I can't go past it.
Love it. So good. Number 2, what do you love about candles?
I just love the feeling of like when I'm cleaning or opening the house or cleaning, I light that candle. It just feels like it's like the last little process of me cleaning the house. It's just nice, to light the candle and have a coffee. And
it's like a finishing touch to the cleaning journey. And then number 3, what is one piece of advice you'd like to give to new candle makers at the start of their journey?
I think to focus in on your craft and don't try and over expand on your product range or fragrances or anything. So you really want to just master that one product, and once you've really mastered it and it's selling really well and you're doing the right thing, then I think you can introduce more products. I think when we're trying to introduce a number of products initially, it can become a bit overwhelming, and running a small business is not easy. It's not the easy option. It's definitely the hard option. So you don't want to be overcomplicating it and making your life harder than what it's going to be. So a small business is not easy. It's probably a good bit of advice. So be prepared for it. Tricky and hard and have ups and downs. And focusing on one product first is probably a good option.
Yeah, focus on the one product, perfect it, and then expand your range rather than starting with multiple fragrances and multiple jars. And as you say, it just becomes so overwhelming so fast. Even though we're so excited to learn it all, you put too much pressure on yourself to try and perfect too many candles at once, and you can burn yourself out, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, you don't want to lose that passion. Like if you're just doing so much and it becomes a chore, you don't want it to become a chore.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can listeners learn more about AUZi Insurance and the Candlemakers Insurance policy?
Just on our website. So it's just AUZi.com, so AUZi.com. I like to think that our website's pretty user-friendly and easy to navigate, but when you jump onto the homepage, you'll see a little box that says Candlemakers. You click on that one. We also have another policy that's called Soap and Candlemakers. So that's for the people who kind of do have multiple products and expanding more than just candles. So you have a look at that one as well if you do have other products. Yeah, there's lots of information on there. So have a read of it. Tracy and I are there Monday to Friday on live chat or phone calls. Otherwise, you can always just send us an email and we're going to come back to you. We are also in all those Facebook groups and things like that. And we do have a pretty strong presence on like Instagram. So people do just send us messages on there and we're always happy to get back to you and kind of point you in the right direction. So don't be afraid to reach out to us.
Amazing. And I'll pop the Instagram link in the show notes as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Nicole. I really appreciated having you on the podcast. I feel like the listeners will really benefit from learning a little bit more about the intricacies of what is important to have and why it's important to have insurance as a candle maker. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thanks everyone for listening today. I hope this episode added value to your candle making journey. Check out the show notes for all the links mentioned throughout today's episode. And if you would like to submit a question, send me a DM on Instagram at Candle Business Coach. And if you haven't already, download your free copy of my guide, 5 Simple Steps to Start Your Candle Journey. It contains tips and advice before you make your first candle, and details are in the show notes. Lastly, please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And thanks again for listening. Have a beautiful day.